Alright, so in this episode, we're going to gesso anything and everything. Okay, so this is the gesso I have. I have this Liquitex acrylic medium, and then I have this stuff that I made into pink. So, we're gonna gesso stuff. I need a paint palette, which I have many of. These are the brushes I'm using. I highly recommend these brushes. These are really nice. This brand. Yeah, I love this brush. Super nice. But anyway, and then I got a bunch of other small brushes. And we're gonna do everything. Like, we're gonna do this dragon probably. We're gonna do this pot. We're gonna do these. We're gonna do this really crappy pink falling apart paintbrush that I'm gonna use for a sculpture at some point. Like, it's literally falling apart. This thing, cause whatever it is. Some books, some clay tools, a sword. I already did this thing. Some weird shaped piece of wood that I found and made. So, that's a thing. Everything. We're gonna do everything. I want to start with this jello, but first we have to clean it. So, maybe we don't have to clean it. We don't have to clean it, it's fine. We're gonna paint over it. Awesome. So we're starting with this. And this is going to be satisfying. First we open this up. We're going to pour a bunch on there. Gesso's pretty thin. It's not really a thick, color. And we're just gonna start painting. I love painting gesso. It's so satisfying. I've been looking forward to this video just because I get to paint a bunch of things like a single color, and gesso just covers stuff up so easily. Probably have multiple layers though, which sucks, but I think I'll get this later. Or find a or something. I don't know. Lots of ideas. Oh, the way that it just covers up all that clay, like it's nothing. It's just like, womp. So easy. And one thing I recommend when you're using gesso is to put down some sort of tarp or any type of like newspaper or a covering of some sort, because it will splatter all over the place. Like, I already have a dot there. I doubt you can see it. I already have a dot in there. I have like a bunch of little speckles everywhere. But basically, when you're going like this, when it comes off the edge, it'll just flick and it'll start painting everything. So make sure you have some sort of underlying like protector for whatever surface you're painting on, because you don't want to accidentally put dots everywhere. I did that at work the other day. It was not good. So don't do that. So I have this silicone mat underneath me. It's pretty nice. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, there you go. But using that seems to help a lot. Otherwise, I have a cutting mat here. And I'm on a black table, which I'm probably going to gesso at some point anyway. So, who knows? Or I might leave black for ease of video capture. I don't really know. And then when you're applying gesso, you might have to also apply multiple layers. So starting off, you do your first layer pretty thin. You don't want it to be extremely thick. Mine I'm doing a little thick just because I have lots of time after this to let it dry. But the best way to do it is multiple thin layers, and you'll want to get every brush stroke in the same direction. You don't want anything to be like all of this is going the same direction, right? Can you see that? Yeah. But you don't want to randomly go like this because it messes up everything and then you can tell. So the best way to do it is to keep it going the same direction the whole time. Just like this. That way you get an even and somewhat indistinguishable covering of whatever object you're doing. In this case, it's a giant green thing made of plastic. Or whatever 3D printing stuff is made out of. I'm pretty sure this was a plastic 3D printer. Like one of those tubes that feed it inwards and then it lays down on top of the bed layer by layer from the bottom to the top using supports and structure systems. I hope that makes sense. Probably doesn't, but... And then for the top, I'm all going in the same direction as well. See, I already got it all over myself. Yes, when you gesso things, you want to make sure you get a full coverage of all of the areas that you want to paint over later. If you want to keep some of the underlying stuff, you can, but it ends up looking pretty sloppy and messy when you have pieces of the, in my case, green underneath leaking through. For example, you can see all of my paint strokes right now, but when you add multiple layers, you won't see that as much, and it'll be pure white. Or at least as pure white as paint can get sometimes. So this is just my first layer, and I'll be doing multiple layers of all of these things at some point, eventually. So I'm going to finish this layer and start doing the next thing. Don't know if I'll speed it up or not for the video, but we'll have to see. And you just really want to take your time covering everything. Sometimes you do have to go from different angles to fill in all the gaps and spaces, but then you just brush over it again in the same direction. Now gesso is a really good medium to use for a lot of things. You could basically cover it on anything, so long as you have some sort of primer at the end or resin layer to keep it on to really smooth surfaces. This, for example, is a somewhat rough surface because of all the 3D printing. But when you do have gesso, it's really good to have for like canvases and making sure you get like it gives you a really nice texture to paint over. It also covers everything very nicely, so if you're painting on wood and you don't want the wood texture to show up in your paint, you would paint it and gesso it first, and then you wouldn't see the wood texture at all, or the wood grain. You would just see kind of paint looking lines. It kind of becomes the texture of a canvas once you're done, which is very cool. It also has very opaque coloring, so it's really good at covering up stuff. Like, this green is super bright and it's already making most of it white, and I'm still doing just a thin layer. Like, this is just my first layer, so it's really nice with that kind of stuff. That, or it's just really beneficial for covering things up, fixing things, giving yourself a good solid foundation, if you will, to start painting and drawing on top of. You can draw on top of this after this is done as well, which is very cool. If I would have drawn originally on the plastic itself, it wouldn't have grabbed any of the graphite that I was drawing with, and it wouldn't have shown up as well on the green plastic as it would have on the white textured canvas of the gesso. This is also a pretty good gesso brand. It's pretty cheap. I didn't really find it for that expensive, so if you do want to try this brand, it's pretty nice. I definitely recommend it. Liquitex is one of my favorites. You can also mix it with other colors too if you want to just put a colored thing on right away, but I will let you know that the white will go on the best, and it'll help your colors pop when you put colors on top of it. Instead of if you decided to give it a base of green, well now all your colors are going to have a hue of green underneath. So this is what I recommend as the best way. It's pretty messy, so you can like go back and fix some of your lines and stuff if you want. Uh, Try to get it to be a smoother texture. If you want the rough texture, that always works too. And you can also add gesso textures, like if you thicken the paint with paint thickener, you'll get a lot of thicker of a paint, and you'll be able to apply it in textures using a knife, a paint knife, or your paintbrush, and kind of just glob it on there, and then that'll be a lot more texture as well. Whereas this type of stuff I'm using right now, just by itself, it creates a thin layer but still holds the shape of the original item. Okay, now this one needs to dry. I don't know where to dry it. I didn't think about that. We're gonna let it dry right there, probably. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Let's do some cubes. Cubes are fun. So yeah, it's pretty easy. As you can see, it just like completely covers up that wood grain. Just it's gone. It's like pure white paint now, which is so cool. It's really handy. It always comes in handy too for like a sculpture that you made that you want to paint, or any type of craft where you just don't want the wood texture to show through. Like home decor, it can be used for a lot as well. Highly recommend this stuff. You can make like picture frames out of this, and just, oh, this stuff is so cool. If Gesso didn't exist, I would be so sad. I apply it before like everything, unless I want the wood texture to show through. But yeah, it makes a huge difference. That and spray paint, but spray paint will still show things like wood textures, but it'll apply way quicker. So that's kind of up to you to decide. If you just want like one color, but you still want the texture, spray paint's probably the way to go. Otherwise, you can paint it yourself as well without using gesso, and then that'll also give you that texture and color. And you actually get to mix the colors yourself. A lot of spray paint, you can't really mix your colors. You just have to grab what they have at the stores. Or you can get them like specially ordered to be a certain color, but that kind of sucks. There we go, there's a cube. Put that there to dry. Is it actually going to dry like that? Yeah, I think so. Usually you want to do this in like parts. You want to like do one layer, and then like keep the bottom like open. So like I would do all these sides and then just not do this side right here. And that way when you actually put it down on something like this, it still keeps whatever area you're putting it on clean. However, I don't really care how the bottom layer of the gesso looks, and I also don't really care how messy my table gets, because eventually I want this art table to be completely full of paint splotches. So, as you can see, it's pure black right now, and black is just boring right now. I want it to be full of color and like texture, and I want it to look like a paint palette, and then eventually maybe I can actually just squirt paint directly onto it and paint like that. That'd be so fun. And then put it down and just let it dry that way. Let's go with one of these guys now. I could probably use my fingers to paint some of it. Paint on some because I have some left over. Gesso is messy, or at least I'm a messy painter, so I get paint everywhere when I paint. I don't know how to not do that, so we're just gonna keep doing that. Plus, I kind of like how things look when they're painted. Like when you look like you just walked outside of a painter's shop and there's just stuff everywhere. It's the coolest feeling. Or the coolest looking thing, I mean. Okay, cool. We're almost done with this one. That was fast. Damn, that was really fast. Okay, I want to get all the sides, and then I'm going to reposition my fingers so I can get the spaces I didn't have before. Perfect. Now we let that one dry. I'm just going to lean against this guy. It might affect it, but who the hell knows. Another good example is like of how good gesso is this really shiny texture. One way you can fix that is by sanding it first and then gessoing it, but I'm lazy and I don't want to sand right now, so I'm just going to paint over it and hope it works. But yeah, it does cover up stuff like pretty well. especially if you sanded it. Like that texture of the sandpaper grit and the now bumpy surface would just capture all that paint so much better. But look at that. Oh yeah, and then I'm just holding it in places that I haven't gessoed yet, so like when I move my fingers, you can see my finger was there, that slightly uncovered place, especially up there on the top, you can really see it. So I just kind of wait until it dries a little bit in my hands, and then I move my hand to cover up an already gessoed part, and then I gesso the parts that I missed. Yeah, really trying to get that thin. Oh, see, there's a dent, so like you'd have to kind of go in other directions and then thin it out again. Oh, that's a little too much paint, I think. Oopsies. And then for this lid, I want to get under that lip, and then just really getting all of these different nooks and crevices is going to make it look good from all angles, because I could just do it from this angle, but then all of this, which I can't see, wouldn't be painted. So like, you want to be able to spin it around, right? Like if I spin it there, there's obviously some silver showing. Oh, you can see where I was holding it. Cover that up. So I'm going to stop touching this before I take off all of the paint. No, don't ungesso with my fingerprints. Okay, good enough. We're gonna... Oh, I don't want to touch it. Okay, we're gonna leave that there. If you just want like a pure white, and you don't want any, you can paint on top of it after to get an even better white. But if you want to take the somewhat lazy route, you just do a couple layers of this, which I know I wouldn't want to do more than one layer sometimes because it's pretty, you gotta wait for it to dry and then you gotta do it again and stuff like that. But it gets this really nice even coating of just white over the entire thing. Let's move on to something more fun. Let's do this. Yeah, let's paint this. See, just look how well it covers up everything. Like, just so nice. Once you go through one layer and it all dries, going back on top the opposite direction really helps fill in all those gaps and holes and cracks that you made through your first layer. I'm going to paint this at some point. Probably add some like little pieces of my language on it or something, or I don't really know, but I'll add some things to that. Otherwise, I believe we're done. Looks like this one's already dry. It's like you can tell how fast this stuff is, especially if you lay it thin. That's already dry and it's not coming off. So then that's when you would start going in like this. See the direction that it's already going? It's going this way. So that's when you start going in like this, and you see how it just really adds and makes that even whiter. Plus it gives you like a more consistent texture throughout the whole piece that you're making when you go in opposite paint grain directions. It's very helpful. Thank you for watching this video. I am going to head off to work now, but I hope you have a fantastic day. This is how messy it can get afterwards, so make sure you wash your hands. Soap and water will get the stuff off just fine.